John Keim, ESPN, NFL Nation. He covers the Redskins. He joins us now. John, thanks for joining us on short notice. What is the latest on Alex Smith?
Well, Dan, thanks for having me on first. He is still in the hospital recovering from multiple surgeries. There is an infection from, because of all these surgeries, he does have an infection, and that's what they're trying to obviously get under control. So still in the hospital and definitely faces a long recovery and a difficult one.
What was the initial surgery?
He broke his tibia and his fibula in his right leg. It was a compound spiral fracture. So the surgery was to correct all that. And the odd thing in this whole situation was the comparison to Joe Theismann and his injury in 1985. And the weird thing is that it was to the day, and Theismann was actually at the game. And I'm bringing that up because after the game, I talked to Theismann. A few of us did, but I talked to Theismann, and he said, well, the difference is that I had the infection, and I had a bone sticking out of my leg. It didn't have to worry about the fear. Alex didn't have it. Didn't have to worry about the fear of infection. Well, they found out eventually that was actually the case. So that's what the initial surgery was to correct.
And I know, since this is a sports show, I have to look at it from that sports, vacuum here of looking at what the Redskins are going to have to look at for the quarterbacking situation here, because I don't know what the time frame is, if there is a time frame for Alex Smith to ever play football again.
Absolutely. And that, Dan, that is the hard thing in this situation. And I was talking to guys in the locker room yesterday, and, Trent Williams was talking with him, and he said, on the outside, people are going to look at this and worry about how we're going to do this, how we're going to do that. He goes, we're just worried about Alex. And so you always have to keep that in mind. But from a football perspective, they are in a tough spot. Now, after the injury, I would talk to people there, and they knew at that time, before all this stuff was released, that they were going to have to start looking at quarterbacks in the draft. And when I talked to people, they said, they would say, well, what round? Well, they don't know because they didn't know where Alex's situation was headed, and they still don't. So in a few months, a lot of things can change. But they know they're going to have to get another quarterback in here, and partly because Colt McCoy broke his leg too. Now, he should be okay for the spring, in the spring workouts, but that's another fact in the situation. So the problem with this situation with Alex is the cap hit. They can't, if they wanted to cut him to free up cap space after the season, it's too prohibitive. It would count around $40 million against their cap. They'd have $40 million of dead money if they cut him this year. The realistic time to cut him would be in a couple years. Now, they could get rid of the contract after the 2019 season and still face a cap hit, but it'd be a lot more palatable than it would be this offseason. So that's a complicating factor. So my guess is they would keep him on the roster, maybe on an IR situation, and then look to draft somebody and maybe also sign a third guy to have just in case.
Final topic, and it has to do with Jay Gruden bringing up the possibility of bringing in Colin Kaepernick. I wasn't sure how this was going to be received locally because you're around Jay Gruden all the time. Do you really believe that the Redskins, with that owner, thought about bringing in Colin Kaepernick?
No, not really. No, I don't.
Okay. I didn't think so because, Daniel Snyder's on record as saying, that America says you should stand for the anthem, and I just can't imagine you were going to bring him in. But if you're correct, then you're saying, well, he's got to get ready in our offense and all this. Mark Sanchez didn't look ready. And is Colin Kaepernick better than Mark Sanchez? Yes, even without knowing the playbook, I'm guessing that he is even now. But I don't know if there's any future to this if they look at next season where they said, you know what, maybe we would bring him in to start the year since you're not sure your quarterback situation's in a state of flux.
Correct, and I think you're right on all those points. And Jay Gruden did say, if it had been week one, maybe you look at it differently. I think from talking to them, just from Kaepernick as a football player, with all the other stuff aside, his point would always be, even prior, if you talk to them, he says the same thing privately. They say publicly that because of the situation they're in, they needed somebody that they knew. And that they knew what he could do. And now they do have guys on their staff who have worked with Kaepernick. And now, so take that for whatever it's worth, but they do have people on the staff who worked with Mark Sanchez in New York, so they knew what he knew and what they could translate to him in their offense. So that's, so I think with 4 weeks left in the season, that was their comfort point, and that's why they brought in Josh Johnson. Johnson had been in Jay Gruden's system in 2 different stops. Now, he hasn't thrown a pass in like 6 or 7 years in a game. So, but those are the stated reasons. And whether or not how serious they were really bringing it up, I think because of what Gruden said about wanting some familiar, well, if that was never going to be really the case here. But yeah, he did say if it was a week 1 situation, maybe you do it differently, which would mean then you could revisit. But I wouldn't see it happening then either.
John, thank you. We appreciate your time.
Thanks for having me on, Dan.
That's John Keim, ESPN NFL Nation, covering the Washington Redskins.
For more Dan Patrick Show, tune to Audience Channel 239 on DirecTV or download the Dan Patrick Show app.